Sobriety alone is not recovery, and codependency is not empathy. Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers,
We're therapists.
and we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin.
Good morning, Tyler.
Good morning, Brannon. A lot earlier for you than for me.
Yeah. It's nice. It's nice getting up early and getting out. I've been going on these walks every morning. It's amazing. I love it. So
That's the perfect place because the temperature is always perfect.
yeah, it's been just that since we've been here. You know, there's been this major heat wave over there, I hear.
Yeah, the last few days it's been hot and then it started to cool off here just the last day or two. But yeah, it's been really warm.
Nice. So no trips for you this July?
We leave town the day after this recording for our yearly Wind Rivers trip. We usually go right over around your birthday.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just don't take a chainsaw.
No chainsaws this year. We're gonna make sure we do it right this year. Follow all the legal applications that we need to. So
Yeah, don't shoot an elk or something up there while you're at it.
yeah, we're gonna be on the up and up this year. So
Hey, good.
Yeah.
Way to keep the laws.
Yeah. Well, before we jump into this, Brannon, we're going to have a good discussion on this topic. Before we jump into this, just a shout out for the Rising Sun retreat that we have coming up. We actually shifted the dates from the last couple of episodes that we mentioned. So make sure that you check the calendar. September 19th through the 22nd is when we will be having our Rising Sun retreat. It's basically the capstone event that we do along with our Radiant Dawn Women's Retreat every year. That's like our favorite thing that we do. We get to meet real people. You listeners who are here listening to our show get to come and meet us and actually have full, real experience with the process of wrestling with God and reclaiming your heart. And
Well, Tyler, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say we have been, and it really goes along with today's topic, but there is plenty of men that need this right now. And you and I realize that we want people to be able to come. So we have a discounted rate at first, right?
Yeah, we have early bird pricing right now. If you get to the website, you can catch the early bird pricing. It's only going to stay open for a couple of weeks at this lower rate. It's at $1,500 for the sign up right now, and then it's going to bump up after a couple of weeks. So if you're interested, and if you're the kind of person who's needing that work on your heart, work on your strength, work on your masculinity, work on your wrestle with God, work on the topic we're going to talk about today, then you should get over there and check it out. risingsun.org. That's risingsunson.org. Awesome.
Okay. Sweet. Well, should we get into it?
Yeah, Brannon, let's jump into this topic, and there's a reason why we're doing it today.
Yeah, we've had kind of a string of episodes recently that follow similar pattern. That if you listen closely, you can see some commonalities through some of the questions that we've gotten and the guests that we've had. And so I just wanted to have a conversation with you to really illustrate a common theme that goes on with recovery, especially when it comes to men. And it goes something like this, and you can definitely help me with this here, but I won't get into the whole story. We've heard the story 1,000 times. So I saw porn when I was young. I was raised religious. I have major parent wounds. And I, tried to get some sobriety, told a church leader, ended up married, either told my wife or didn't before we got married, tried to get some sobriety, got caught. And then I have been in recovery, and I say that with quotation marks, for the last little while. I've been working recovery for the last little while. And along with this working of recovery, which is actually trying to get sober, I'm trying to please my wife
Save my marriage.
by being Mr. Nice Guy, and save my marriage by doing everything I can to try to make my wife happy. And that's how I'm trying to save my marriage. So this, this idea of recovery is I'm spinning my wheels trying to be sober, and I'm spinning my wheels trying to just do whatever she tells me is the right thing to do. So
I'm calling those things recovery. So I'm spinning my wheels getting sober, and then I'm spinning my wheels trying to make sure I please my wife at all costs because I'm afraid of losing her. And I call that part empathy. And I think what we want to do today, Brannon, is maybe talk through maybe a couple of the nuances of why people are getting tripped up in this and calling that recovery when it's actually not recovery, and what we actually mean when we talk about things like recovery and empathy. That's the goal today.
This whole dynamic, it actually feeds the problem and the issue. And although it might look good, it is driving the very problem that's in place. And so we talk about people shooting at the wrong target. They're shooting at the target of, I can get sober enough and that means I'm good. They're shooting at the target of, I can do enough good things that my wife wants me to do and that means I'm good. And at the cost of actually reclaiming their heart and knowing themselves and recovering an understanding of self. And it perpetuates losing yourself further and further by trying to do these good things out of fear.
I think there's a key element of what you're saying there, Brannon, which is, and this is normal. This is the life that we've been living, until we start wanting to work this recovery we're talking about. And fear has always been the primary motivator. Fear and shame has always been the primary motivator. And I think, and this is to be fair to the people that we're talking to and about, like these are the men that we work with every single day in our day-to-day work, Brannon. They're good men. They're nice guys. And what the challenge is, and I think this is where I think I can maybe step in, and I've been thinking about this myself and go, you know what am I doing that might be helping to facilitate this wrong way of approaching recovery? And here's what I've come up with, and you can break this down for me. We speak in terms of principles all the time, right? So we talk about humility, accountability, empathy, taking ownership, right effort, honesty. We talk about all of those things, those principles. And here's what I think is happening sometimes is those principles are true principles that lead to a wholehearted life where you can step into a full-on life worth living kind of a recovery. But when you hear those principles and you hear them from the place that is used to hearing them from a place of shame and fear, what humility sounds like is play small and don't accept any of your goodness. What accountability sounds like is every time someone's...
Hang on. I want to get to accountability. Humility is what that looks like is I show up weak and I don't know who I am, and play small. I like how you say that.
I always play small. I always like shrink. I'm always like, yeah, you're right. I'm not that good. Like I've never been very good. And really what you're saying, and this is where maybe we go back and redefine these terms and what we actually mean, because that's the interpretation when you hear it from a place of shame and fear.
Yeah.
Play small, don't know who you are, and make sure you placate everybody, right?
A lot of times what we see is, look, I've messed up, so I don't have a leg to stand on. I can't speak my truth. I can't make waves. Like I need to be humble because I've messed up so badly. And that's acted as if that's humility.
Yes. And that's wrong. Like that, not in the sense that we talk about, humility. I like the definition of humility of agreeing with everything that God says about me. So that means I have to actually agree with the goodness and the strengths as much as the weaknesses that I'm working on, and instead of like just all the bad stuff, right?
Real humility, you resonate in confidence.
Humility is an acceptance of self. It's an acceptance of who you are, and a willingness to work on the things that are weaknesses, but a willingness to accept and utilize and share the strengths that you've been given.
Yeah.
And that's why that wrestle, like that's why we talk so much about that wrestle with the higher power, with humility, because when you have that connection and that wrestle with your higher power, you're getting true answers about all of your identity instead of just these terrible shame things that you've been living your whole life. Right?
Yep.
Second, accountability. What I think nice guys and shame-based, listeners here is accountability means I need to own everything, including my partner's feelings over the things that I've done.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I need to it's always my fault. Everything is my fault. And it's always on me to fix everything. And that's, again, not actually what we mean when we talk about
not accountability.
What is accountability?
I mean, I love accountability. Accountability is owning who you are and your decisions. And so it's owning the consequences of those things. So I let's say my wife wants to go to the beach today or not. And I'm like, well, I'd rather go on a hike. And then I'm like, you know what? Like I'm good with going to the beach. It's actually being good with it. It's actually being accountable for that decision and not playing the victim to her, not resenting her, it's actually being authentic and being accountable for who I am and how I'm showing up in this world. So accountability is not the weak side of things that you were talking about of, I'm the worst and I need a tattletale on myself and I need to show everybody that everything's my fault. Like that is not accountability. Accountability is taking accountability for your life. I am making choices and I am taking on the consequences.
Beautiful. So I would just maybe add to that, Brannon, a tiny bit, that when we talk about accountability, we talk about taking ownership for our choices and for the outcomes of those choices. And we don't take on the things that are beyond our control, even as a result of our choices.
Yeah.
So what I can go and say, man, I've hurt my wife and I'm sad that I've hurt my wife. And in accountability, I'll take what I can to try to fix that, the parts that I can fix. I'll take ownership. I'll say, I'm sorry. I'll change my behaviors. I'll work on being more trustworthy, whatever that is. But what I can't do is then go over and somehow still be expected to take on fixing all of that because I've gone and broken something that I can't actually fix now.
Yes.
I can't. And when I try to take ownership for that, it's actually setting myself up for more shame, more failure, more hell. And it's actually depriving the other parties that are involved from being able to have their own freedom by taking accountability for their parts, even though some of it's not their fault.
See if you can hear the difference. Like, let's say wife is mad at me. Oh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have made you mad. Versus, you know what, honey, I can't take accountability for how you're feeling right now, but I love you and I'm here for you.
And I can see that there's pain here.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm here. I can listen. But do you see the boundary there? Like I'm taking ownership of what's in my control and what's not in my control. And that is going to bring a level of strength to that relationship where you actually can support her and empathize with her. But the weak accountability where you're taking way too much ownership of things because you don't know who you are, that is not recovery. And that does not create empathy.
Beautiful. And that leads to the next one, Brannon, the next principle, empathy. When it's looked at it from a place of shame and fear, what I think people interpret when they hear what empathy is I step into the relationship and because I've caused all the damage, right back to the combination of both, I need to be, quote, humble and accountable in the ways we just discussed. And so now what I do is I show up, and this is this is what I think a lot of men that we work with, I think is empathy is beat yourself up in front of your wife and show her how bad you feel.
Yeah.
And
You
that
mean
is
over apologizing is not empathy?
no. And being like, if she's having a terrible day and you come in and then I have to be worst day. And because I caused all the pain and I suffer too, and I struggle and I'm terrible. Like that is actually not empathy.
Right.
You're trying to figure that out. You're trying to be like, okay, I'm trying to figure out how to be in the dark place with my partner. But empathy is stepping into the situation and feeling with someone without making it all about you.
If I know who I am, and love who I am, then I can stand on my own 2 feet. And if I can stand on my own 2 feet, then I'm stable, I'm strong, and someone else can lean on me. If I don't know who I am and I'm codependent and I need you to be okay so that I'm okay, then every time you're not okay, you're going to feel not safe with me, not connected to. And so if you're tricking yourself and you're saying, well, but that's what recovery is. What, like when I'm going everywhere the wind blows me, according to what my relationships are happening, that's connection. Connection happens. Tyler, you and I talk about how couples need to actually detach from each other, do their recovery work so they can reattach in a healthy way. That's what we're talking about is I have to get my relationships out of the way from trying to use them for my self-worth in order to be okay. And once I can do that, then I can actually empathize. If my self-worth isn't tied to my wife's feelings, then I can really hold space for those feelings.
That's right. That's why when we use the term holding space, a lot of people don't understand that. And what holding space is I know who I am and I'm offering my strengths to you and I'm offering my own emotional energy to you, but I'm not making it about me and I'm not consuming you for it. Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of partners, they feel that when we're trying to learn empathy, it's messy and it doesn't go really well. And a lot of partners feel like, man, I tried to give them this chance to hold what I was feeling, and what it turned into is they either beat themselves up or they got defensive, and then it unraveled itself because it was about me getting my needs met through you telling me about your problems, and then me going how terrible I am.
Yeah.
Right. And what you're saying is when we do the work to actually understand who we are, then we can offer who we are to that situation, and that includes our presence. That includes like we have something to actually offer, which is our presence. And the presence is what brings the relief. The presence is what actually like feels safe, even though it might still have some tension in it.
Right.
Right.
Yep. Tyler, I want to talk about another principle, but I do want to talk about a system issue. But I'll get there. So let's talk about honesty for a second.
Honesty. So when you look at it from a shame and fear-based kind of a place, and I think a lot of people hear this, when we use the word honesty, most people hear, because they've done so good at hiding, they hear, I need to disclose everything. And that's what honesty is. So now I've got to run around and I've got to find all the things that I did wrong today, and then I need to figure out how to tell on myself and beat myself up over it. And then that means I'm going to be honest. And that's not actually what we mean when we use the word honesty. Now, we do mean, yes, be proactive in being transparent with the work that you're doing. But what honesty is taking ownership for who you are and what you're doing, and do it in a boundaried way.
Yeah.
Honesty has as much to do with boundaries as it does disclosure.
Tyler, it feels backwards, but your partner is more likely to feel safe when you're okay with them being uncomfortable about who you are. And so what that means is I can be honest despite your reaction to it. And then I can couple that with empathy and care about how that feels for you, what my honest truth is, but I'm still honest. Where, we see men tattletaling on themselves and lying about their sexuality and who they are, and trying to. I think we asked one of the guys, like, are you the guy that just is like a puppy dog on a string who like, what is your truth? Is your truth this or your truth that? And he's kind of like, well, whatever my wife tells me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, well, then he lacks honesty and he lacks accountability, because he's like, he doesn't even know what his truths are, and so he's just going along with something, and so honesty is looked at in such a one-dimensional way. I think especially in quote unquote recovery, where it's just like, well, was I honest about messing up or not? Did I own that I messed up or not? And that's all we think about when we think of honesty. Think about authenticity. Like, I am me. This is who I fully am, and I'm going to share that with you. And either you'll love me or you won't love me, but I am me.
Honesty is reality.
Yeah.
Honesty is, and this is where I think we got to go back and just reemphasize one part of what you said, Brannon, which is honesty is not manipulating other people into feeling better about me. Honesty is letting people make their own decisions based on the reality of who I am and where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that distinction's very important, what you just said, Tyler.
Yeah.
It's not manipulating people to like me. It's having boundaries and being me, regardless of whether you like me or not. And that's honesty. So, and that actually creates safety in a relationship, which creates empathy and connection and all of those things.
I think if you were to talk to most partners about the very topics we're talking about, many partners would go like, that's exactly what I'm feeling when you guys are describing this stuff. Like, my husband thinks he's being humble and accountable and empathetic and honest, but what I'm feeling is like, I'm almost feeling weakness and manipulation.
Yeah, there's like this, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, but if it actually showed up the way that we're talking about, it would be difficult. There would still be tension. There would actually be some disagreement amongst partners. But what you said, Brannon, there would actually be trust, and there would be more safety as a result of that trust, because then there could be accurate boundaries.
Yeah. There is, Tyler, there's systems at play that actually reinforce this whole dynamic of the weak masculine and the fake recovery. And so here, and I'm not saying this to blame anything, but it just is the case. So what happens is, when a man has lived in this weak place for so long, they have certain systems all around them. Anything from their own internal identity systems and beliefs about the world around them, to the 12-step meeting that they're going to, where there's 12 other weak men driving home, not recovery, but fake sobriety, right? To the marriage that they're in. Their wife wants them to be this strong, healthy, empathetic partner, but really doesn't. And she's unhealthy herself, and she's, not wanting him to actually show up authentic, because she wants to beat him down. To the church they go to on Sunday, where there's a feeling of weakness when it comes to masculinity and this earn it mentality of try to be a good boy. And I could go on, but these systems, they drive this core belief of, you earn your worth. You earn it. You are not lovable as you are, and you need to prove yourself. And that's what's underneath a lot of this stuff. And you take the father wounds, you take the parent wounds, the mother wounds, and you can see this connection between, I don't know who I am, because at a young age, that in many ways that was taken from me. And so I tried to fill the gap by figuring out how to get my self-worth. And the way I fill that gap is by trying to perform. It's a performance-based thing. And then I use that throughout my life to try to be okay. And what needs to be addressed is the wounds, is the trauma.
I think so much, Brannon. I'm going to say this in a slightly different way because it's worth repeating the principles of what you're saying here right now. When you look at, overcoming some type of, like when you look at someone who's trying to overcome a sexual addiction, the natural snapback is that, well, my sexuality has caused so much damage that the best answer is for me to kill that sexuality.
Yeah.
And what you're
gets the blame.
That's what you're saying, Brannon, is a broader version of that very principle, which is masculinity has the tendency, especially when it's wounded masculinity, it has a tendency to show up like toxic masculinity, which does a ton of damage. And our world, the relationships that we're in, the religions that we're a part of, the cultures that we're in, they have taken what has been the damage of toxic masculinity, and the way that the solution has been kill it all.
Yeah.
Kill it. Like, and when we adopt that mindset, we're already adopting a mindset of non-reality, and we're also adopting a mindset of basically self-rejection and self-denial.
Yeah.
Because the truth is that as men, we were born to come into this world to offer certain things that fall within what would be authentic masculinity. Those things we talk about all the time, of principles of strength, honesty, integrity, stability, all those things. And when you try to kill off masculinity in general, you're already rejecting yourself, which then fuels more shame, more doubt, more performance-based stuff to try to get everybody to be happy with you. And you're like a hamster in a wheel that's never going to actually find the truth of who you are.
Tyler, it's interesting, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, like, I don't know what better term there is, but to be a neutered man, in a way, is you're neutered. You're sitting in groups with a bunch of other neutered men who are trying to help you stay that way. Or you're in a marriage where you're neutered, and like, but what's interesting is, like, there's all those systems that keep a man that way. And then there's this new thing coming out of these, like, programs from coaches and things about, like, be an effing man, be an effing man. This is how you effing do it. Like, stop being a pussy. Like, and,
toxic masculinity, basically.
Yeah, just like guns and Trump and masculinity and So it's like there's not even a middle ground to this.
That's the problem, Brannon, is the middle ground is where the actual answers lie.
Well, what I would say, it's not even the middle ground. It's something completely different. It's completely way different than either one of these extremes. And, and what that is actual, and this is what we talk about all the time, Tyler, is actually getting to know yourself, actually loving yourself, and then being who you are in this world. And it's the scariest thing to do. The work that needs to be done is starting to step into who you are. And it's the scariest thing to do because rejection is on the table. But as you step into the courage to just be who you are, your heart heals. You start to love yourself again. You start to be okay in your own skin. And as that happens, that's where recovery starts to take place, because now you're knowing who you are. You're trusting yourself. You're actually connecting to God from a place of love, not fear. And that's way different than all of the ways that you're showing up in these weak ways.
That's beautifully said, Brannon. I was listening to a talk by Jordan Peterson just a couple of days ago, and it hit me differently. I've heard these things before, but it kind of hit me differently, and it goes along with what you're saying here, that he talked about this same thing with masculinity, and he said most men, they live a life of trying to kill the monster inside of them, when in reality, what you need to be is a monster.
Yeah.
He said you need to be a monster. He uses the definition of meekness was his weird definition. He said it's one who knows how to use a sword but chooses to keep it in its sheath,
Yeah.
which means I have to be familiar with my possibilities of doing big time damage, knowing that I'm capable of doing those things, and then choosing to learn the process of bridling that power. It's like learning to bridle nuclear energy, right? You can have a
Yep.
full-on meltdown and cause all sorts of damage, or it can, light up the world. Um, and that's really what the process of recovery is it's learning how to take all of me, to bridle those things and use those things that would make me a monster for good purposes, and then to let the rest of me shine in the world and to offer myself completely to the world in the way God designed me to be, which is that I'm actually dangerous. And that's scary when you've gone and had a life where you've already gone and blown some things up with your dangerous monster parts. It's not very fun to hear someone say, you are a monster and you shouldn't kill that part. You need to learn how to channel it. You need to learn how to bridle it. You need to learn how to accept it. And that sounds backwards after all of that damage has been done.
You know, a man who lives on the edge is a man who knows himself. And if you're just trying to not get close to the edge at all, and I'm not talking about the edge of,
Yeah, you don't need to be driving by the porn shop today to
that's
see
not
if
what,
you're on
that's
the
not
edge.
what, I'm not
That's not
even
what you
talking
mean.
about that. I'm
No.
talking about something completely different. I'm talking about you have an edge. You like, there's a wildness to you. And like, it's interesting, Tyler, you think of like Beauty and the Beast, or I'm reading a book over here. It's like it's a total like beach read book. It's called A Court of Thorns and Roses. And it's kind of like, I don't know, but it's a story similar to,
Sounds like a romance novel.
it is. It is. And in it, like, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but it's about this woman who basically gets trapped living with this monster, with this like monster who's actually this sexy masculine thing, right? Like, same with Twilight. Like, so you look at these, we could call them smut books if we want to, but or whatever. But why are they enticing to women?
Yeah.
Because women don't read books, like, they don't fly off the shelves about a man who's a weakling, who's just trying to please them, and they tell them what their truths are all the time, right? So it's extremely attractive for somebody to know themselves and know who they are and to have that edge about them. And the reason why
Are you team Edward or team Jacob?
I don't know. Did you read those books?
I always went with Jacob myself.
You read them.
No, I didn't actually.
I didn't read it.
But
I did not read them. I'd admit it if I had.
But pretty much when they very first came out, what you're saying is like, I remember my wife going to the very first movie after all the books came out, and she went with like all of her friends. These are like, women in their 30s and 40s, and she said the very opening scene when like Jacob comes strolling out with his like werewolf shirt off, and like the whole theater of women was just like, and there was always like this. But what you're getting at, Brannon, is this, like, and this is an interesting discussion even about just the general topic of lust too. Is lust is the pursuit of my non-reality, right? So if I'm in a relationship with a guy who's showing up weak, who's always pleasing, who ever offers me something to push against in terms of testing ideas and thoughts and who I am, and then I go and I read these books, and it's like there's some strong masculinity between both Jacob and Edward in their own different ways, and it's what's interesting, they're both dangerous.
You could kill me in an instant, but you don't. You protect me.
You don't, because you harness that. Yeah, because you harness that monster inside of you, and you use it towards a good purpose of fighting for me, of working for me, of being loyal to me. Like, all of that stuff. Now that I know that there's the dangerous monster there, it becomes a protector of me rather than the thing I'm afraid of.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And so if you just hide your fangs all the time and like never show anything like that, that actually is scary for your partner, because
no safety.
You're weak. Yeah. And so the pathway to healing, the pathway to getting what a lot of the people that we talk to really want, which is safety and connection and intimacy,
trust.
Tyler, there's not a like easy way around it. There's not I'm just going to like not do that vulnerable part of it. I'm just going to not do the courageous part of recovery. I'm going to do the prove it part, all the things I have control over part. Like I'll do those parts of recovery. But what I don't want to do is walk the pathway of really getting to know myself, because that's terrifying.
And that is the pathway.
That's the only way to recovery.
That is the pathway to real recovery.
Yeah.
And it's scary.
Yeah. It's scary, but it's beautiful.
It's amazing.
So when you start to go through that process and you're like, holy cow, like I don't have to be driven by shame. I'm not just a horrible like monster. Like I can accept all of me and I'm okay. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful process to watch unfold when somebody starts to work a recovery from that place.
It's incredible, and it is bumpy, and it is difficult. It's a hard winding road, but it's a road that's worth traveling. It's the work of a lifetime. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And Tyler, I don't try to rip on 12-step groups, and I actually love the 12 steps. I wish
what you're ripping on is the culture of smallness.
Yeah.
That's what you're ripping on. Like you don't need to be small. Like you just need to learn how to channel your power.
Therapists and 12-step groups and there's certain podcasts and things actually try to teach you that that's actually recovery.
It's not.
And it's not. And so if you're being led down a road to be a weakling, then you might need to reassess the inputs in your recovery work and actually do real recovery work.
Yeah. And now I want to make sure we clarify that there's a bunch of dudes now listening to this on the other side going like, that justifies me to go be an a-hole or a jerk. That's not what we're saying. Like we're saying, take the trip to go into your own depths to understand who you actually are and then own it.
Our trip. Are you talking about plant medicine? I like this. You're coming my way here a little bit.
We got something on the brain, I guess.
This has been a good discussion, Tyler. I really like what you talk about with those principles. Recovery is not about do, it's about be. And when you're talking about accountability, humility, honesty, it's about being those things, not trying to do those things. And you resonate in a certain way. There's an energy about you of strength, confidence, love, surrender, faith. Those type of things start to exude from you as a result of real recovery. And it's absolutely possible for anybody to go through the process to get there.
I imagine that I've appreciated our discussion, Brannon. I've imagined that this has probably stirred up several different waves of emotion in different people who are listening. So we just want to acknowledge that we're grateful that you're here. We would love to hear your feedback on what you've heard us say today. I know that there's a wide range of probably thoughts and opinions here. So come on the show and talk to us about it, or leave us a review, or send us a message. We'd love to hear your feedback. And
Tyler, was Edward in recovery? I'm just joking.
I don't know, but I know that he was able to deliver on a lot of the other things that you look for in a man. So, and his skin glittered to boot.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, to our listeners, we love having you here. Thank you for being here with us. And until next time, you guys, keep on keeping on.